the whispering woods. I always loved hiking, the feeling of being enveloped by nature's embrace, far away from the hustle and bustle of city life. But nothing could have prepared me for the terror that awaited me in the depths of those ancient woods. It was a crisp autumn morning when I set out on the trail, the leaves crunching beneath my boots as I ventured deeper into the heart of the forest. The air was still, the only sound the gentle rustling of leaves in the breeze. But as I pressed on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me from the shadows. The path twisted and turned through the dense undergrowth, leading me further and further from civilization until I was completely engulfed by the towering trees. And that's when I heard it, the faintest whisper, carried on the wind like a sinister secret. At first, I brushed it off as my imagination playing tricks on me, the product of an overactive mind in an unfamiliar environment. But as the whispers grew louder, more insistent, I knew that something was terribly wrong. I tried to turn back, to retrace my steps and flee from the darkness that lurked within the woods. But it was no use. The path had vanished, swallowed up by the encroaching shadows, leaving me stranded in a labyrinth of twisted branches and thorny underbrush. And then I saw them, the figures lurking in the undergrowth, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light as they watched me with a hunger that sent shivers down my spine. I tried to scream, to run, but my legs refused to move, rooted to the spot as the whispers grew louder, more frenzied, filling my mind with a sense of dread that threatened to consume me whole. With trembling hands, I reached for my phone, desperate for a lifeline in the darkness. But as I dialed for help, the whispers grew louder still, drowning out the sound of my own voice until all that remained was the hollow echo of my own terror. Hours passed, or was it days, lost in a haze of fear and confusion as I wandered aimlessly through the endless expanse of the forest, the whispers driving me ever deeper into the heart of darkness. And then, just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I stumbled upon a clearing bathed in moonlight, a sanctuary from the horrors that lurked within the woods. But as I stepped into the clearing, I felt a cold hand close around my heart, squeezing tighter and tighter until I could barely breathe. I turned to flee, to escape from whatever unseen force held me in its grip, but it was too late. The whispers had found me, their icy tendrils wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket as they dragged me into the depths of the darkness, where I would remain forevermore, a prisoner of the whispering woods. The Haunting of Apartment 13. Moving into a new apartment is supposed to be exciting, a fresh start in a new place. But for me, the excitement quickly turned to dread as I discovered the dark secret lurking within the walls of apartment 13. It started innocently enough, a faint scratching sound in the dead of night, like nails on a chalkboard echoing through the empty halls. At first, I brushed it off as the noise of the building settling, but as the nights wore on, the scratching grew louder, more insistent, as if something, or someone, was trying to claw its way out from the other side. I tried to ignore it, to chalk it up to my overactive imagination running wild in an unfamiliar environment. But then the nightmares began, visions of shadowy figures lurking in the corners of my room, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light as they whispered promises of unspeakable horrors that awaited me in the darkness. Desperate for answers, I delved into the history of the building. uncovering a long-forgotten tragedy that had unfolded within its walls. Decades ago, a young woman had been driven to madness by the relentless whispers that haunted her every waking moment, eventually taking her own life in a fit of despair. But her spirit lingered on, trapped between the realms of the living and the dead, doomed to wander the halls of apartment 13 for all eternity. And as I listened to the scratching grow louder, more frantic, I realized with a sinking heart that she was not alone. For there were others, lost souls drawn to the darkness like moths to a flame, their anguished cries echoing through the empty corridors as they begged for release from their torment. I tried to flee, to escape from the haunted apartment that had become my prison, but it was no use. The spirits had sunk their hooks into me, feeding off my fear and despair like a parasite, their whispers driving me to the brink of madness. And then, just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I saw her, the young woman who had started it all, her pale face twisted in a rictus grin as she reached out towards me with spectral hands. I tried to scream, to run, but I was rooted to the spot as she drew closer, her icy touch sending shivers down my spine. And as she enveloped me in her cold embrace, I knew that I was doomed to join the ranks of the lost souls that haunted apartment 13, trapped in a nightmare from which there was no escape. The Forgotten Library. There's something inherently eerie about abandoned places, the sense of history frozen in time, waiting to be rediscovered. But as I stepped into the forgotten library nestled at the edge of town, I realized that some secrets are best left buried. The library had been closed for decades, its dusty shelves lined with rows upon rows of forgotten tomes and ancient manuscripts. Intrigued by the prospect of uncovering hidden treasures, I ventured deeper into the labyrinthine halls, the musty scent of old books filling my nostrils as I explored. But as I wandered through the dimly lit corridors, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, as if unseen eyes followed my every move from the shadows. I tried to brush it off as my imagination running wild, but the sense of unease only grew stronger with each passing moment. And then I found it, the forbidden section tucked away in the darkest corner of the library, its shelves lined with books bound in cracked leather and adorned with strange symbols that seemed to pulsate with an otherworldly energy. Drawn by an irresistible curiosity, I reached out to touch one of the tomes, my fingers tracing the ancient runes etched into its surface. And that's when it happened. The whispers, faint at first, but growing louder and more insistent with each passing second. I tried to tear myself away, to flee from the darkness that threatened to consume me, but it was too late. The whispers had sunk their hooks into me, weaving their way into the very fabric of my being until I could think of nothing else but their haunting melody. Days turned into weeks as I delved deeper into the forbidden knowledge contained within the pages of the ancient books, my mind consumed by visions of unspeakable horrors that lurked just beyond the edge of reality. And then, one fateful night, as I pored over a particularly sinister tome, I felt a cold hand close around my heart, squeezing tighter and tighter until I could barely breathe. I tried to scream, to call out for help, but the whispers drowned out my cries, their icy tendrils wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. And as darkness swallowed me whole, I knew that I had become just another victim of the forgotten library, doomed to spend eternity trapped within its cursed halls, a prisoner of the whispers that lurked in the shadows. The Abandoned Asylum. There's a reason they call it the asylum, the place where they lock away the broken, the lost, the forgotten. But as I stepped through the rusted gates of the abandoned building, I realized that some nightmares never truly die. The asylum loomed before me, its crumbling facade a testament to the horrors that once took place within its walls. I tried to ignore the sense of foreboding that settled over me like a shroud as I ventured deeper into the decaying structure, but it was no use. The air was thick with the scent of decay, the only sound the faint echo of my footsteps on the cracked linoleum floor. And then I heard it, the distant sound of laughter, muffled and distorted, as if carried on the wind from another time. I followed the sound, drawn inexorably towards the source of the darkness that lurked within the asylum's twisted corridors. And that's when I saw them, the figures huddled in the shadows, their faces twisted into grotesque masks of agony as they reached out towards me with skeletal hands. I tried to run, to flee from the horrors that surrounded me, but the asylum had become a maze of madness, its walls closing in around me with every step I took. And as the laughter grew louder, more frenzied, I knew that I was not alone. For the spirits of the asylum's tormented souls still lingered within its decaying halls, trapped between the realms of the living and the dead, their anguished cries echoing through the empty corridors as they begged for release from their eternal torment. And as I stood there, paralyzed with fear, I realized with a sinking heart that I had become just another victim of the asylum's twisted legacy, doomed to join the ranks of the forgotten souls that haunted its halls for all eternity. The House on Willow Street. Nestled at the end of Willow Street stood a house, its weathered facade looming ominously against the backdrop of the darkened sky. For years it had stood abandoned, its windows boarded up and its doors chained shut, a silent sentinel watching over the neighborhood like a forgotten relic of a bygone era. But when rumors began to circulate of strange occurrences within its walls, I couldn't resist the pull of curiosity that drew me to its doorstep. Armed with nothing but a flashlight and a sense of trepidation, I ventured into the darkness, determined to uncover the truth behind the legends. As I stepped across the threshold, the air grew thick with the scent of decay and mildew, and the floorboards creaked beneath my weight as if protesting my intrusion. The only sound was the distant echo of my own footsteps on the hardwood floor, a steady rhythm that seemed to reverberate through the empty halls. And then I heard it, the whispers, faint at first, but growing louder and more insistent with each passing moment. They spoke of unspeakable horrors that lurked within the shadows, of restless spirits trapped between the realms of the living and the dead. Terrified, I tried to turn back, to flee from the darkness that threatened to consume me, but it was too late. The whispers had sunk their hooks into me, drawing me inexorably deeper into the bowels of the house. As I ventured further into the darkness, the whispers grew louder, more frenzied, filling my mind with a sense of dread that threatened to suffocate me. And then, just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I saw her, the woman in white, her ethereal form drifting towards me with an otherworldly grace. She spoke of a curse that had befallen the house, of a darkness that had taken root in its very soul. And as she reached out towards me with ghostly hands, I knew that I was doomed to become just another victim of the house on Willow Street, lost forever in its endless labyrinth of shadows. With trembling hands, I pressed on, determined to uncover the truth behind the curse that had claimed so many lives. But as I delved deeper into the darkness, I realized that some secrets are best left buried, and that the house on Willow Street held horrors beyond my wildest imaginings. I found myself wandering through endless corridors, the walls closing in around me like the jaws of some unseen predator. Each room I entered seemed to hold its own dark secrets, whispers of the past echoing through the empty halls like the ghosts of long-forgotten memories. And then, just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I stumbled upon a staircase leading down into the depths of the house. With trepidation, I descended into the darkness, the air growing colder with each step I took. As I reached the bottom of the staircase, I found myself in a vast underground chamber, its walls lined with rows upon rows of shelves filled with dusty tomes and ancient artifacts. It was a library of sorts, but one unlike any I had ever seen before, a repository of forbidden knowledge hidden away from prying eyes. With trembling hands, I reached out to touch one of the books, its leather-bound cover cracked and weathered with age. As I opened it, the pages seemed to come alive with a spectral light, illuminating the secrets contained within with an otherworldly glow. And that's when I saw it, the tome that held the key to unlocking the mysteries of the house on Willow Street. Its pages were filled with cryptic symbols and arcane rituals, each one more terrifying than the last. It was a grimoire, a book of dark magic that promised untold power to those brave enough to wield it. But as I read on, I realized with growing horror that the price of such power was steep, a soul for a soul, a life for a life. And as I closed the book, the whispers returned, louder and more insistent than ever before, urging me to embrace the darkness that lurked within the house. With a sense of dread gnawing at my insides, I turned to leave, determined to escape from the clutches of the house on Willow Street before it was too late. But as I reached for the door, I felt a cold hand close around my heart, squeezing tighter and tighter until I could barely breathe. I tried to scream, to call out for help, but the darkness swallowed me whole, leaving me to face the horrors of the house on Willow Street alone. And as I sank into the depths of despair, I knew that I had become just another victim of the curse that had claimed so many lives before me. But even in the darkness, there was a glimmer of hope, a faint light that beckoned me towards it like a beacon in the night. With every ounce of strength I had left, I reached out towards the light, determined to break free from the grip of the house on Willow Street once and for all. And then, just when I thought all was lost, I felt a warmth spreading through my veins, banishing the darkness that had consumed me from within. With a final burst of energy, I pushed open the door and stumbled out into the cold night air, free at last from the horrors that had haunted me for so long. But as I looked back at the house on Willow Street, I knew that its darkness would never truly be vanquished, lurking in the shadows like a festering wound waiting to be reopened. And as I turned away, I vowed never to return to that accursed place, haunted by the memories of the horrors that lurked within its walls. For the house on Willow Street was more than just a building. It was a living, breathing entity, a manifestation of the darkness that dwelled within the hearts of men. And as long as it stood, the whispers would continue, echoing through the empty halls like a mournful lament for those lost souls who had dared to enter its domain. The mirror's reflection. In the dimly lit antique shop, I found a mirror that seemed to call out to me, a relic from a forgotten era, its ornate frame adorned with intricate carvings. But as I gazed into its depths, I realized that the mirror held a sinister secret. At first, the reflection seemed normal, a perfect likeness of myself staring back at me with vacant eyes. But as I continued to stare, I noticed subtle distortions in the glass, as if it held something more than just my own image. Night after night, I found myself drawn to the mirror, unable to tear myself away from its hypnotic gaze. And with each passing day, the distortions grew more pronounced, revealing glimpses of a shadowy figure lurking just beyond the surface. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination running wild, but deep down, I knew there was something malevolent about that mirror. It seemed to beckon me, whispering promises of forbidden knowledge and untold horrors. And then, one fateful night, as I stood before the mirror, I felt a cold hand grip my heart with icy fingers. The glass rippled like dark water, and the shadowy figure emerged from its depths, its eyes burning with unholy fire. I tried to scream, to flee from the demonic presence that had been unleashed upon me, but it was no use. The mirror had claimed me as its own, a vessel for the darkness that lurked within its cursed reflection. And as the shadowy figure reached out towards me with claw-like fingers, I knew that I was doomed to spend eternity trapped in its twisted realm, a prisoner of the mirror's malevolent gaze. The Whispering Statue. In the heart of the town square stood a statue, an imposing figure cast in cold, unyielding stone. But as night fell and the streets emptied, the statue came to life in ways that defied explanation. I first noticed it one evening as I walked home alone, the echoes of my footsteps mingling with the distant hum of the city. The statue's eyes seemed to follow me, its expression shifting from stoic indifference to a twisted grin that sent shivers down my spine. I tried to ignore it, to pass it off as a trick of the light, but the feeling of being watched persisted, growing more intense with each passing night. And then, one fateful evening, I heard it, the whispering. At first, it was just a faint murmur carried on the breeze, but as I drew closer to the statue, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. They spoke of dark secrets and forbidden knowledge, of unspeakable horrors that lurked just beyond the edge of reality. Terrified, I tried to flee, to escape from the darkness that surrounded me, but the whispers followed me, their icy tendrils wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. And then, just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, the statue spoke, a voice dripping with malice and madness that chilled me to the bone. It promised me power, unimaginable riches, if only I would pledge myself to its service. But I knew better than to trust the whispers of a creature born of stone and darkness, and with a trembling hand, I reached out to touch the statue's surface. And that's when it happened. The world around me dissolved into chaos, the ground shaking beneath my feet as the statue crumbled into dust, its sinister presence banished from the town square forever. But as I stood there, shaken but alive, I knew that the horrors of the whispering statue would haunt me for the rest of my days, a reminder of the darkness that lurks just beyond the edge of our reality. The Forgotten Cellar. Beneath the old farmhouse lay a cellar, its entrance hidden beneath a trapdoor in the kitchen floor. For years it had been forgotten, its secrets buried in darkness. But when I stumbled upon it one rainy afternoon, I knew that some secrets were best left undisturbed. As I descended into the depths of the cellar, the air grew thick with the scent of mildew and decay. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling like macabre curtains, and the only sound was the echo of my own footsteps on the cold, damp earth. And then I saw it, the altar, hidden away in the darkest corner of the cellar, its surface stained with blood and adorned with strange symbols that seemed to pulsate with an otherworldly energy. Terrified, I tried to turn back, to flee from the darkness that lurked within the cellar, but it was too late. The trapdoor slammed shut behind me, sealing me in with the horrors that lay in wait. And as I stood there, paralyzed with fear, I felt a cold hand close around my heart, squeezing tighter and tighter until I could barely breathe. I tried to scream, to call out for help, but the darkness swallowed me whole, leaving me to face the terrors of the forgotten cellar alone. The Forgotten Well. Deep in the heart of the woods, there stood a well, its stone walls weathered by time and neglect. Legend had it that the well was cursed, its waters tainted by the blood of those who had met their end within its depths. Despite the warnings, I couldn't resist the urge to uncover the truth behind the tales that had been passed down through generations. Armed with nothing but a sense of curiosity and a flashlight, I ventured into the woods, determined to find the forgotten well. As I trudged through the underbrush, the air grew thick with the scent of damp earth and rotting leaves. The only sound was the rustling of branches in the wind, a mournful symphony that seemed to echo the whispers of the past. And then, just when I thought I was lost, I stumbled upon it, the forgotten well, hidden away in a clearing, bathed in the soft light of the moon. Its stone walls were covered in moss and ivy, and the water within seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly glow. With trembling hands, I approached the well, drawn by an irresistible curiosity to uncover its dark secrets. But as I peered into its depths, I felt a cold hand close around my heart, squeezing tighter and tighter until I could barely breathe. I tried to pull away, to flee from the darkness that lurked within the well, but it was too late. The whispers had found me, their icy tendrils wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket as they dragged me into the depths of the darkness. And as I sank into the cold embrace of the well, I knew that I had become just another victim of its cursed waters, lost forever in the depths of the forgotten well.